what we've got, chaps.
Greetings, folks. AnIolairGhorm here with a World of Warships Division replay. This replay features Piss and Napalm in the premium Tier-VIII U.S. Navy destroyer, the USS Kidd, Jimijaz in the Tier-VIII Royal Navy light cruiser, the HMS Edinburgh, and myself in the Tier-VIII U.S. Navy battleship, the USS North Carolina. We're in a domination match on neighbors, and we are top tier, which is always nice since Tier-VIII ships tend to see a lot of up-tiering. Ship upgrades and commander skills, Piss and Napalm is all about the AA, since this is the USS Kidd, and this is a shared commander with his Montana. That's the choice of expert marksman over last stand. Jimijaz's build in the Edinburgh is typical for a Royal Navy light cruiser, and my build in the USS North Carolina is a combination of tank and concealment. So, since this is a division replay, again, we will be featuring our influence on the match, and as always, there will be some quick transitions in the replay since some activity happens simultaneously or nearly simultaneously. So before we get to the gameplay, a couple of comments. First, I want to apologize in advance if I sound a little congested or if there are some breaks in the commentary now and again. I am working through a cold that has now migrated to my chest, so I apologize for that in advance. And secondly, I've received a lot of very positive feedback from folks regarding these multiplayer divisional replays. I'm really pleased that people do like them, and please do share them around if you haven't already, as I want other people to enjoy them as well, and I'm always looking for further feedback on how to improve them. Starting with Jimijaz in the Edinburgh, rocking the Arctic camo, we get sight of the opposing Jimijaz. Piss and Napalm and the Kidd is called target on him. Switch to my perspective in the North Carolina, where I send a salvo out. I'm still getting used to the ballistics on these shells, but this is going to land a Citadel and take out about 40% of the health of the Jimijaz. But we also get sight of the opposing Lightning that has moved to Alpha. We switch to Piss and Napalm's perspective in the Kidd, where he is going to retreat, and for good reason. The Royal Navy destroyers, especially the Lightning and her bigger sisters, are very powerful destroyer killers, and this Lightning does have a lot of backup that is moving to the Alpha Cap, including that Jimijaz and Scharnhorst, and also in New Mexico. So it's a good choice here for Piss and Napalm to retreat and get into some concealment and wait for his support to get a little closer at Alpha before we try to re-engage. You can see that we're in Charlie, although our presence at Charlie is pretty small, and we are also in Bravo. We now detect the Jimijaz again. I've switched to my perspective back in the North Carolina, where I send another salvo out. And again, I'm going to land a Citadel here, but it's not going to be quite enough to take out the Jimijaz. And shortly after I had sent my salvo, Jimijaz in the Edinburgh, whose perspective we're now in, he had also sent, and he's able to land a shell and take out the radar cruiser, claiming first blood for our team. We switch back to Piss and Napalm's perspective in the Kidd, where we've now redetected the opposing Lightning. It's now quite a bit safer for Piss and Napalm to engage here because we've eliminated the radar cruiser, and the opposing Scharnhorst, which was also backing up the Kidd, the Lightning, is now pulling back. And so this Lightning here is basically being abandoned. He is making, the Lightning is making the appropriate choice to retreat. He's dropped smoke to get to cover his tracks and get into concealment. But the Royal Navy smoke lasts a very short amount of time, and Piss and Napalm is going to simply push through the smoke here, which is going to expire in just a few seconds, and we're going to get sight of the low health Lightning here in just a moment. There he is. Piss and Napalm sends out a couple more salvos. We switch to my perspective in North Carolina, where I send a salvo on the Lightning, and I thought I sent a little bit short, but it turns out that one of my shells is going to connect here and take out the Lightning for the first kill, or for my first kill in the game. So I'm going to switch back to Piss and Napalm's perspective in the Kidd, as it's now safe for us to take the Alpha Cap, as both the destroyer and the radar cruiser have been eliminated, and the opposing Scharnhorst is now retreating, and then New Mexico is also backing away. Now, what's going to end up happening here over the next few minutes is after we capture Alpha, Napalm and Jimijaz are going to move north toward Bravo to try to establish some center map control, and myself in North Carolina is going to push through Alpha, and I want to get on the flank of the ships, the New Mexico, preferably take him out, and also discourage the Scharnhorst from pushing back down on the flank. Our Monarch, which is also Alpha, is actually going to push up through the center towards Bravo, so he will provide some very good support for the Bravo cap. We do have a storm moving in. We've now captured Alpha. We do have a storm moving in, and that's going to make things very interesting late in the game, as you will see. Switch to Jimijaz's perspective in the Edinburgh. He wants to put some fire on this opposing Fiji to try to push the Fiji off. Fiji would be a very serious risk for Napalm in the Kid to try to contest Bravo. So we want to try to get this cruiser down. Jimijaz is also working from some considerable range here because we don't know where the opposing Cossack is that took Bravo and killed our destroyer that was at Bravo. The Cossack is on this game is going to be really kind of our key challenger here. He plays a very good game and will end up with top XP for his team for good reason. And so we need to be very mindful and watchful of what he's doing during this replay. We switch to Napalm's perspective in the Kid. He's sending torpedoes into the smoke screen of that opposing Fiji that was in Bravo to either try to push him off further. And now the storm has started to take effect, and spotting range is going to start decreasing here, which is going to make the gameplay a little more interesting. The opposing Fiji that did drop smoke is actually retreated entirely, and we're able to move into Bravo uncontested at this point. But again, we don't know where the opposing Cossack is. We switch to my perspective in the North Carolina because I'm going to try to take down this New Mexico. I normally don't like to be like chasing ships that are on the perimeter like this because it takes away from focusing on the objective. My concern is that I don't want to leave a capital ship with 12 powerful guns sitting on our flank. And granted, we do have a storm coming in, so that would still limit the number of opponents you could fire on, but I still want to get the battleship out of the way so I can push more safely into the north. We briefly switched to Napalm's perspective and now to Jimijaz's perspective, as we can now detect the opposing Cossack that is sitting on the east side of Bravo. So again, we want to keep an eye on him. Switch back to my perspective in North Carolina as the opposing New Mexico is now pushing in toward me, and this will allow me to help focus on this ship. I'm being backed up by two other ships, Gneisenau and an Abruzzi, although they would have been better served to have pushed north with our Monarch to improve our presence in the north. Although I suppose I could have done that as well, but since I was the point ship on this flank, it frankly made more sense for me to head off this New Mexico. Almost got the New Mexico down, send out my rear turrets, and I do finish off the New Mexico for my second kill of the match, and I'm up to about 92,000 in damage. I'm now going to turn north and move toward Bravo. The storm has now taken full effect. I'm sorry, Napalm and the Kid is sending torpedoes in the direction of the opposing Fiji. There's actually two opposing Fijis on the team, so I may mix them up now and again. We have successfully secured Bravo, but our presence in the north on the Charlie side has been completely eradicated. We now have a ship deficit. We also have a point deficit, but we do now hold two caps. We can now see that the Bravo cap is being contested, so we know that the Cossack has moved into the Bravo cap, and what he's going to end up doing is he's going to end up periodically contesting Bravo as he's waiting for the remainder of his team, which has been camping in and around Charlie, to get south to be able to support him. Switch briefly to my perspective in the North Carolina, because I've got this Jimijaz now that's been on my side and has been preventing me from being able to turn more inward toward Bravo, where I really want to go, because I want to get back into the center of the map. Fortunately, like I said, our allied Monarch had moved north and moved towards Bravo and is helping to provide center capital support for the team. So a big shout out to him for focusing on playing the objective. Switch to Jimijaz's perspective in the Edinburgh, because again here we get sight of that very persistent Cossack that is on the north side of Bravo. Cossack has moved out of the cap again. Jimijaz is going to send a set of torpedoes and is going to turn around here, because we saw a pause in the firing of the Cossack, so we can reasonably anticipate that he has sent torpedoes. And then Piston Napalm, that you can see on the right hand side of the screen, is going to try to push in toward the cap, or toward the smoke of the Cossack, to be able to push him out. But we're not going to be able to do that, because the allied Abruzzi sent a torpedo spread very close to Jimijaz, but has sent in a way that is going to prevent Piston Napalm from being able to push against the Cossack. And so you can see some frustration being expressed by both Jimijaz and Piston Napalm in chat about both the positioning and the torpedo send by that allied Abruzzi, which prevented us from being able to push in on the Cossack. Now, things are going to start developing very quickly now, because the storm is in full effect, and both our team and the opposing team are going to now start converging. Here again, the Cossack is now switched to the other side of that map that separates Bravo and Charlie, and has moved back into the cap. Here we get a view of the opposing Perth, which gets into smoke. But then Jimijaz detects the opposing Amagi, which is in complete health, and Jimijaz needs to retreat here. He cannot combat a ship with 410 millimeter rifles like that, and he needs to get into concealment. Switch to the kid's perspective. We're trying to get the Perth down since he's very low health. Switch to my perspective in North Carolina, because one of the opposing Fijis is here, and I'm going to get a salvo out here to finish off the Fiji. We did take the Perth down. Here I finish off the Fiji for my third kill. Switch to Piston Napalm's perspective and the kid, because he detects the other Fiji, but is now also being sandwiched by the Bismarck and the Amagi. He needs to get into concealment. He's way too vulnerable there. He sends a spread on the second of the opposing Fijis. Opposing Fiji makes a fatal error here, turns, and is going to end up taking 2 torpedoes, and is going to take him out of the match. So that is Piston Napalm's first kill. Now we switch back to my perspective in the North Carolina, because there's an opposing Hipper that's going to come through here. And if anybody has any question about whether the turtleback armor on the upper tier German cruisers can protect them, that should answer it right there. So a full salvo right under his stacks, and he takes nothing but pens with no citadels. But here I'm kind of a little bit in trouble, because the Hipper is going to send both sets of his torpedoes on his port side toward me, and I'm going to end up taking a couple of these torpedoes as I'm trying to accelerate and get out of their way. There's 1, there's 2, and I'm going to damage control and put in a heal. So now my next problem is I have a Bismarck on my flank here. And in my opinion, this Bismarck did not play this correctly. He is going to end up actually turning away toward me. And what he should have done, in my opinion, is he should have done a drive-by, because he could have taken me out in a drive-by. But he's actually going to turn away, which is going to take his guns away from me. We switch to Piston Napalm's perspective in the kid, where this low-health Amagi is just about to go down. He is burning. There's one last salvo from another ship, and then the fire set by Piston Napalm is going to take out the Amagi for his second kill. Switch back to my perspective of North Carolina. We've backed up here a few seconds because while Piston Napalm was taking down the Amagi, I am finishing off my brawl with the Bismarck. But again, you can see the Bismarck here doesn't have any of his guns on me, so I'm able to be here full broadside against him, although his secondaries are kind of making mincemeat of my side here. And then I apologize for all the panning. And here I'm going to get the final salvo here and finish off the Bismarck for my 4th kill and the 4-goal achievement that has come with the Ovechkin event. Now I'm just going to keep my bow on the Scharnhorst. I'm quite low health here. I have another repair coming up here in about 20 seconds. But we've now gotten it down to the single remaining ship, the Scharnhorst. We're well over 900 points, and provided that nobody else on our team goes down, we're going to win here in far less than a minute. I'm just going to keep my bow on him. We're going to switch to Jimijaz's perspective in the Edinburgh because he actually has a better angle on being able to fire on this Scharnhorst now. And that is going to slip behind the island and out of my reach in the North Carolina. We lose sight of the Scharnhorst, but I'm going to put up my plane in the North Carolina to keep eyes on him. Our team is very close to winning on points here, and in fact this Scharnhorst is going to end up living. You're going to see a salvo being sent by myself in the North Carolina, but my shells aren't going to be able to clear the island to finish off the battleship. Switch to Piston Napalm's perspective in the Kid as he's trying to close in, but like I said, we're simply going to win on points here and take the match. So a really good match and well played by members of both teams. I want to give a shout out again to Devil Dog 52 in the Allied Monarch. He was very crucial in helping to establish some center map control after we had taken Alpha. And I also want to give a shout out to Mercurial Roberts in the opposing Cossack. He did a really good job keeping things interesting for us and keeping our team challenged and trying to keep his team in the game. So I hope you enjoyed the replay and the commentary. I'll leave the results up for the remaining ships. Please do add your comments and your suggestions below. And as always, we hope to see you out there and we wish you happy sailing.